I stand on the sun-scorched sands of North Africa, where genius and madness collide. Rommel, the desert fox, rose like a legend. But what happens when even the greatest are hunted by their own ambition? Welcome to Forgotten History Tales. Let's dive in. I take you into the blistering heat of the desert, where the air shimmers like a living thing. It's a place where the earth burns, where the sun is relentless and unforgiving. I feel the heat rising from the sand, searing my boots as I step forward, and the smell of gunpowder lingers in the air. The silence of the desert is pierced only by the distant rumble of tanks, the clanking of military vehicles as they crawl through the unforgiving terrain. The shadows of men move like specters, their faces hardened, eyes filled with determination. This is the moment. This is the crucible where one man's fate would be sealed. Erwin Rommel, the man they would come to call the Desert Fox, stands in the midst of it all, his mind sharp, his body taut with purpose. He gazes out over the vastness, the sand stretching to the horizon like an endless sea. To him, this desert is not a graveyard. It is a battlefield, and here he will make his name. It is 1941. The Second World War is raging across Europe, and the desert of North Africa becomes the stage for a different kind of war, one that will challenge not just the weapons and tactics of men, but their very will to survive. The Afrika Korps, under Rommel's command, faces a British force determined to hold their ground. Here, under the blazing African sun, Rommel's brilliance will unfold. Strategic genius mixed with a dash of audacity. But in this vast, merciless desert, everything is fleeting, and even the most invincible of men are at the mercy of the unforgiving sands. I hear the engines of Rommel's tanks, the Panzer IVs, growling in the distance as they approach. Their steel bodies gleam under the desert sun, each tank a silent monster, poised and ready to pounce. Rommel stands tall, eyes narrowing as he watches the movement of the British forces ahead. His hands are steady on the wheel of fate, and his mind races with 1,000 calculations. He is a man at war, but in his mind, he is more than a soldier. He is a strategist, a man who sees the world as a chessboard, every move a critical decision. To the British, he is an enigma, a leader who moves quickly, strikes fast, and always seems to be one step ahead. They call him the Desert Fox, not just because of his cunning, but because of his speed, his ability to outmaneuver them, to find paths where none seem to exist. But to Rommel, the fox is more than a symbol. It's a reflection of his philosophy. He doesn't fight with brute force alone. He fights with the sharpness of a predator, always watching, always anticipating. The wind picks up, carrying the dry scent of sand and dust with it. It swirls around, biting at the exposed skin, pushing against the soldiers, forcing them to cover their faces. Rommel doesn't flinch. He's used to this. He's a man who's fought in this heat before, who's battled through the blinding dust storms, and who's learned to thrive where others falter. Let me take you deeper into this world where the line between genius and madness is razor thin. Rommel is not just a soldier. He's a symbol of something larger. A man who rises from the ashes of Germany's early setbacks in the war, a man who embodies the spirit of the Wehrmacht. Yet, as the desert stretches endlessly around him, he too will become a prisoner of its vast emptiness. I stand beside him, watching as his troops begin to move, the tanks crawling forward like great armored beasts. There's an urgency in the air, an electric tension that hums under the surface. Rommel watches, never flinching, his expression unreadable. He is not a man who shows emotion easily, not one to display his thoughts for the world to see. But inside, I know he feels it. The weight of the responsibility, the pressure of his men's lives, and the knowledge that every move he makes will echo through history. The first shots ring out, sharp and cutting through the desert silence. A tank explodes, a plume of smoke and fire rising into the air. The sound of artillery fills the air, punctuated by the screams of men in the distance. The battle has begun. Rommel moves swiftly, directing his forces with calculated precision. His mind is a machine, calculating, weighing, predicting. He has no time to waste on hesitation. Every decision is life or death. I watch as his tanks push forward, cutting through the British defenses like a knife through butter. The sand beneath their tracks shifts and churns, and I feel the heat rise, suffocating. But Rommel, he's in his element now. He's not just commanding a battle, he's commanding an idea, a vision of victory, of domination, of carving his name into the annals of history. But in the back of my mind, I know this victory, this moment of glory, is fleeting. The war is a machine, and like all machines, it has a tendency to wear down, to consume those who fuel it. For Rommel, his brilliance will be both his greatest strength and his ultimate downfall. The same audacity that wins him battles will lead him down a dark path, one that he cannot escape. The desert, unforgiving as it is, holds the key to Rommel's fate. It will shape him, it will change him, and it will ultimately break him. But for now, in this moment, under the scorching sun, Erwin Rommel is the desert fox, and victory is his to claim. I leave you with this. The battle rages on. The sands shift, the smoke rises, and Rommel presses forward. But a storm is brewing, not in the desert, but in the heart of the war itself. His rise has been swift, his successes legendary, but there are forces at work that even he cannot anticipate. Forces that will soon turn the tide against him. The desert fox, for all his cunning and bravery, will soon face his greatest challenge, not from the enemy he can see, but from the shadows that loom over him, from the very men who should have been his allies. In the heat of battle, under the burning sun, Rommel's fate is no longer his own. The sands are shifting once again. The smoke from the explosion still hangs in the air, thick and acrid, blending with the desert dust, making the world seem hazy and distant. The rumble of tanks and the crackle of distant gunfire echo in my ears as I watch Rommel, unwavering, moving among his men like a commander in his element. He is unshaken by the chaos around him, his mind, sharp and calculating, constantly 3 steps ahead of his enemies. The battlefield, to him, is a chessboard, and every move is meticulously planned. His eyes are sharp, scanning the horizon for weaknesses, for opportunities to exploit. I can feel the weight of his presence, the air thick with the tension of impending victory. But there is something else in the atmosphere now, something I can't quite place, a sense that the desert itself is closing in, pressing in on Rommel. I hear the distant hum of an approaching aircraft, its engine growing louder, closer. The roar of the fighter plane's engines fills the silence for a brief moment before it drops bombs onto the advancing tanks. The ground shakes beneath me as the first explosion rips through the air. The sound is deafening. First the deafening scream of the bombs, then the massive thud of impact. A plume of smoke rises, thick and black, swallowing everything in its path. The men on the ground scatter like ants in the wake of the blast, but Rommel, he remains calm, his gaze unbroken. His mind does not falter, even in the face of danger. The desert fox does not run from the storm, he commands it. Through the haze of smoke and dust, I see him give quick orders to his officers. They move swiftly, organizing a counterattack, repositioning tanks, rallying the men. His presence, calm yet commanding, is enough to restore order amidst the chaos. His confidence is infectious, and the soldiers respond with the kind of unwavering loyalty that only Rommel could inspire. They move like shadows, quick and decisive, their training and discipline a reflection of their leader's vision. Rommel knows how to inspire fear in the enemy, but he also knows how to inspire respect in his own men. It is this balance that makes him so effective. As the battle rages on, I feel the tension build within me like a tightening coil, each second bringing us closer to something I cannot yet see, but can feel in the pit of my stomach. I watch as Rommel's forces push forward, his tanks surging through the smoke, relentless in their advance. I can hear the sharp crackle of gunfire, the whistling of bullets overhead, the screams of men as they fall, the smell of sweat, blood, and dust. The battlefield is alive with sound and movement, each moment suspended in the heavy heat of the desert. But even as Rommel presses forward, something feels different now. There is a change in the air, a shift that I can't quite explain. The enemy is not retreating as quickly as expected, and their defenses are proving more resilient than Rommel had anticipated. I see him pause for a moment, a flicker of something crossing his face, a brief moment of doubt, quickly masked by his usual stoic expression. He's too sharp not to notice the growing resistance, the way the British forces are beginning to regroup, the way they're adapting to his tactics. I can almost hear his thoughts racing as he assesses the situation, analyzing the enemy's movements with the same precision he uses to read the battlefield. Rommel's mind, however, is already calculating the next move. He knows that to win in the desert, he must think beyond the conventional, beyond the standard tactics. It is his ability to innovate under pressure that has earned him the admiration of both his enemies and his men. But I can see it now. The slightest hesitation, the smallest crack in the surface. It's a human flaw, one that even the desert fox cannot escape. The tanks continue to roll forward, the desert floor vibrating under their weight. The sound of the artillery fire is deafening now, and I watch as one of Rommel's tanks is struck, the impact sending it careening into a cloud of dust and debris. The crew inside must be dead. I feel a cold chill run down my spine, the grim reality of war settling in like a heavy weight on my chest. The men around me continue to move, unfazed, their eyes fixed on their tasks, their loyalty to Rommel unwavering. Rommel stands at the center of it all, a pillar amidst the chaos. But even he cannot deny the growing pressure. The battle is not going as smoothly as he had hoped, and the British forces, underestimated at first, are proving to be a formidable foe. The early advantages, the lightning strikes that had earned Rommel his fame, are slipping away. I follow him as he walks through the thick smoke and the bodies of fallen soldiers, his face unreadable, his movements deliberate. I feel the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him, the understanding that this battle could turn against him at any moment. The terrain is shifting beneath him, his once reliable tactics, the ones that had brought him such success, are no longer working in the way they did before. The desert that had once been his ally is now a force to be reckoned with, and the British forces are adapting quickly. Rommel reaches a small rise in the desert floor and surveys the battlefield, his gaze distant, searching for something, anything, that could turn the tide in his favor. His eyes narrow, and for a brief moment, I see the desert fox in all his glory. the brilliant strategist who had once turned the tides of war with a single bold move. But now, I see the cracks in the facade. The weight of command is heavy, and even Rommel can feel the pressure mounting. As I watch him, I can't help but wonder, has the desert fox already begun to lose his edge? Or is this just the calm before the storm, the moment before his brilliance finds its next target? The battlefield rages on around us, but I know deep within my bones that this battle is far from over. Something is stirring in the air, something darker, more dangerous. Rommel's rise has been swift, but with every victory, there is always the possibility of a fall. And as the smoke of battle clears, I can't shake the feeling that the true test is yet to come. I turn my gaze back to Rommel, standing at the crest of the rise, looking out over the shifting desert. For the first time, I sense a fleeting moment of vulnerability in his eyes, a fleeting crack. The desert stretches out before us, endless and suffocating, as if the earth itself is swallowing us whole. The sun hangs high in the sky, a blistering, fiery eye that watches over the battlefield. The heat is unbearable, clinging to the skin like a heavy blanket, and the air shimmers with the oppressive weight of it all. Yet, for all its vastness, for all its punishing brutality, the desert has become Rommel's domain. It is a place where he has carved his reputation, a place where his genius has flourished. But as I stand beside him now, I can feel it, the subtle shift in the air, the growing sense of unease that even the desert fox cannot escape. Rommel's tanks continue to advance, their engines roaring, the ground trembling beneath them. The battle is still raging, but it has taken on a new rhythm now, a shift that I can feel in my bones. The British forces, though once on the defensive, are beginning to regroup, their resolve hardening. Rommel's men are still pushing forward, but the momentum, once so firmly in their favor, is beginning to slow. The terrain, once a trusted ally, now seems to work against them, the scorching heat making every movement a struggle, every tank an exhausting burden. I see Rommel's eyes scan the battlefield, his expression focused, but there's something different now. He's no longer the man who moves with effortless confidence, who strikes with precision. Now there's a hesitation in his step, a flicker of uncertainty that passes through his eyes. It's only for a moment, but I see it. Rommel, the great desert fox, is not invincible. The heat, the endless desert, the British forces pushing back, it's all beginning to weigh on him. His officers move quickly around him, delivering reports, exchanging orders, but Rommel barely seems to hear them. His gaze remains fixed on the horizon, as though searching for an answer that isn't there. I can sense his mind working at a feverish pace, calculating, analyzing, but no matter how many moves he makes, the result remains the same. The British are holding firm. I feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. Rommel's tactics, once so devastating, seem to be losing their edge. The British are no longer caught off guard by his lightning strikes, no longer faltering in the face of his speed. They've adapted, they've learned, and with every passing hour, they are growing stronger. It's a realization that hits Rommel like a blow to the chest. The desert fox does not retreat, he does not falter, but there is a certain weight to his movements now, a subtle shift in the way he commands his men. He's not just fighting the British anymore, he's fighting time itself. The hours stretch on, and the sun grows heavier with each passing minute. The pressure is unbearable, and I can see it in his face. This battle is taking everything from him. I follow him through the smoke and dust, moving from tank to tank, from officer to officer, listening to the hurried orders being barked across the battlefield. There is no room for hesitation, no time for doubt. But even as Rommel moves through his men, giving orders with the precision of a man who has spent his life in the heat of battle, there is something else in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, of frustration. The British have dug in, their defenses stronger than ever, and Rommel's genius, once enough to turn the tide of battle, is now being met with an equal, if not stronger, resistance. As we reach the front lines, the sounds of gunfire grow louder, the rattle of machine guns and the distant thud of artillery strikes shaking the ground beneath our feet. I see Rommel's face tighten, his jaw set in a hard line. But there's something different about his expression. He's not just angry. He's conflicted. There is no victory here, not the kind he's accustomed to, not the kind that comes with the rush of a sudden, overwhelming strike. This is a battle of attrition, a slow grind that wears down the will of men, that erodes even the strongest of commanders. The weight of the situation begins to press down on Rommel. I see his hands tremble slightly as he grips the binoculars, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of weakness, for any opportunity to exploit. But there's nothing. The British are prepared, their defenses entrenched, their resolve as hardened as the desert itself. Rommel stands there, motionless, his mind racing as he searches for an answer that isn't there. I feel the heat of the sun pressing in from all sides, the weight of the desert bearing down on us both. The soldiers move past us, their faces etched with exhaustion, their steps heavy in the shifting sand. I can hear the distant groan of the artillery, the whine of the air as bombs fall in the distance. The world is a blur of heat, dust, and noise. And yet, Rommel stands there, his face impassive, as though he is searching for something beyond this battle, beyond this moment. It's then that I realize Rommel is not just fighting the British. He's fighting himself. He's fighting the weight of his own expectations, the pressure of the men who rely on him, the weight of history pressing down on him like the very desert itself. His reputation has been built on swift victories, on brilliant tactics, on his ability to move like a predator across the battlefield. But here, in the vastness of the desert, against an enemy that refuses to break, he is facing something far greater than anything he has ever encountered. I watch as he turns away from the front lines, his eyes narrowing, his jaw clenched in determination. He knows that the desert is not a place for hesitation. The sands are shifting beneath him, and he must act quickly, decisively, if he is to turn the tide. But I can feel the change in him, the shift that comes when a man begins to question whether the battle he's fighting is worth the cost. Rommel knows the stakes, knows the cost of failure. But in this moment, as the sun burns down on the desert and the battle rages on, I wonder, how much longer can the desert fox hold on? The answer, I suspect, is closer than either of us realize. And as the battle continues, I feel a tightening in my chest, a sense that this may be the moment where everything changes. The sun, relentless in its fury, casts an almost unbearable heat upon the battlefield. The desert has become a furnace, the very earth beneath my boots seeming to hum with the heat. The air, a thick, choking veil that makes every breath feel labored. We're deep in the heart of North Africa now, far from home, surrounded by sand and steel. The relentless sounds of the battle, gunfire, the rumble of tanks, the crash of artillery, are ever present, vibrating through the ground beneath us, reverberating in our chests. Yet, amid the chaos, I find myself watching Rommel, his silhouette against the harsh, unforgiving landscape, his mind as sharp as ever, though his body seems to be weighed down by an unseen burden. I follow him, though I feel the weight of each step now. The soldiers around us move with urgency, their eyes grim, their faces covered with dust and sweat. Rommel, for all his legendary speed and decisiveness, is moving slower now, his steps measured, like a man who knows that every decision could be his last. His eyes, once full of fire, now seem tired, distant, haunted even. He's still the desert fox, still the brilliant tactician who outsmarted his enemies at every turn. But now, his genius is being tested. The tide of this battle has shifted, and not in his favor. His audacity, the very thing that made him great, is now being met with resistance on every front. We stand on a ridge, looking out across the battlefield. The British forces have dug in, their defenses formidable. Rommel's tanks, those once unstoppable machines of war, now seem to be struggling to push forward. The battlefield is a patchwork of sand and steel, smoke rising in tendrils, choking the air. I can hear the distant crackle of artillery fire, the whine of shells soaring overhead. Rommel stands there, silent, his eyes scanning the horizon, searching for something, anything, that could turn the tide of this battle in his favor. The men around him continue to carry out his orders, but I see the flickers of doubt in their eyes, the same ones I've seen in Rommel. They know the stakes. They know that the battle could be lost if the next move isn't the right one. And I know, deep down, that Rommel feels it too, the weight of history bearing down on him. He's not just fighting for victory anymore. He's fighting for his legacy. And, perhaps more importantly, he's fighting against something deeper. The realization that, for all his brilliance, he might not be able to win this time. The heat presses in on us, a suffocating weight. I can see the sweat glistening on Rommel's brow, his grip tight around the binoculars. He gives a few short orders to his officers, his voice steady, though there's a sharp edge to it now, an urgency that wasn't there before. I watch as they disperse, moving like shadows through the smoke, and Rommel follows them, his pace quickening, driven by a force I cannot name. But I see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands tighten into fists. I hear the soft hiss of his breath, steady but controlled. Rommel is still the desert fox, but I feel something else in him now. The confidence is there, but it's tempered with a sense of desperation, a sense of urgency that seems foreign to the man who once seemed so invincible. And as I follow him, moving swiftly across the battlefield, I realize what is happening. Rommel is no longer the hunter. He is the hunted. His genius, his daring, has put him in a position where he must outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast an enemy that is no longer afraid. And for the first time, I can see it in his eyes, the unspoken fear that his moves may no longer be enough. We approach the front lines, and I see the aftermath of the latest clash. Men lie in the sand, motionless, their faces covered in dust and blood. The tanks, once proud and mighty, are now smoldering wrecks, the fires of war consuming them like everything else in its path. The battlefield is littered with the wreckage of broken dreams, of hopes dashed in the heat of the desert. Rommel moves among his men, his face grim, his steps purposeful. I can hear him speaking to the officers, issuing orders with precision. But even his voice, steady as it is, carries an undertone of something darker. A man does not speak with such certainty when he is unsure. I see his mind working, calculating, weighing the next move. But for the first time, his options are limited. The British are holding firm, and their counterattacks are fierce. There are no easy victories here. no quick triumphs to seize. Rommel is in a battle now that he cannot win with sheer brilliance alone. The weight of his reputation presses down on him like the desert sun, suffocating, relentless. I see him look back across the battlefield, his eyes narrowing, scanning for any sign of weakness. But there is nothing. The British have adapted. They've learned his tactics, and now they're fighting back in ways Rommel did not anticipate. For the first time, the Desert Fox is facing an enemy that refuses to be caught in his traps, an enemy that has studied his every move and is now ready for whatever he throws at them. The realization hits him, and I can see it. His gaze turns cold, calculating, as he watches his men move forward again, desperate for some breakthrough. But it is no longer the same, no longer the blitzkrieg tactics that had once made him unstoppable. It's a slow, grinding advance, one that drains the strength of both the men and the machines. The Desert Fox, it seems, has met his match. I feel the shift in the air, a tightening in my chest as I watch Rommel. His mind races, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this battle might not end in victory, that his name, his legacy, could be forever altered by the turn of a few fateful moments. The heat, the dust, the cries of the fallen, all blur together as I watch him stand there, a figure in the desert, facing the reality of his own limitations. The winds begin to shift, carrying with them a faint smell of smoke and the bitter tang of defeat. Rommel stands there, unmoving, his mind still sharp, still searching for an answer. But I know the truth now. The sands are shifting beneath him, and the Desert Fox is no longer the hunter. He is now being hunted by forces beyond his control. In that moment, I hear the crack of gunfire in the distance, and Rommel's gaze sharpens. The game is not over yet, but I sense that the storm is coming. It's not the one that Rommel can predict. This battle may break him, or shape him into something more than he ever anticipated. But one thing is certain. His greatest challenge is yet to come. The desert winds howl, kicking up a cloud of sand that stings my face, gritty against my skin. The air is thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. The battlefield feels like a furnace, its heat a constant weight that presses down on every breath. The sun is unforgiving, its rays burning down from above, casting long shadows that stretch across the desert floor. But beneath this relentless heat, something is changing. The stillness in the air is palpable, tension hanging like a storm ready to break. I can feel it now, more than ever. Rommel's legend is teetering on the edge, his brilliance tested by forces beyond his control. We move, my eyes never leaving Rommel, as he navigates the chaos of the battlefield. He's still the commander, still the man who led his troops with audacity and strategy that once seemed unstoppable. But now, every step he takes, every decision he makes, carries the weight of something heavier. Failure, perhaps, or a destiny beyond his understanding. The Desert Fox is no longer the hunter. He is being hunted by his own doubts, by the slow, suffocating pressure of war that has turned against him. The sounds of battle are relentless, and I hear the distant thud of artillery, the roar of tank engines, and the crackle of machine gun fire. But it's not the same. The rhythm of the fight has shifted, become slower, more deliberate. The British forces have adapted to Rommel's tactics, countering his every move with calculated precision. His lightning strikes have faltered, and now they are locked in a brutal, attritional battle, one that demands more than quick thinking and bold moves. Rommel, for all his brilliance, is fighting a battle that even he might not win. I watch him as he pauses on a ridge, looking out over the battlefield. His face is etched with concentration, but I can see the fatigue in his posture, the subtle slump of his shoulders. He's been here before, caught in the grip of war, fighting for victory when it seems impossible. But now, something in his eyes tells me he knows this time is different. This battle is not going to end the way he expected. His mind, always sharp, is racing through his options, looking for any opening, any weakness to exploit. But the longer he watches, the more I sense the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Prepare the tanks," he says, his voice steady but tinged with something I can't quite place. Determination, or perhaps desperation. He moves quickly, barking orders to his officers, each command precise, each movement sharp. His men scatter, pulling their vehicles into position, ready to strike again. But even as they prepare, I can see Rommel's mind at work, calculating, adjusting. The brilliance that once made him an unstoppable force is still there, but it's being choked by the circumstances surrounding him. This is not the war he anticipated. This is not the quick, decisive campaign that had once been his trademark. The terrain, the heat, the growing resilience of the British, they are all pressing in, tightening the noose around him. I move closer to him, following his every step. He doesn't look back, doesn't acknowledge my presence. His eyes are locked on the horizon, scanning for any change, any sign that the British are beginning to falter. But the landscape, stretching endlessly before him, offers no relief. His mind is working, trying to see beyond the immediate battle, beyond the sand and smoke, to the larger picture, the grand strategy, the bigger win. But there is a hesitation now, a flicker of doubt in his movements. The British forces have dug in, fortified their positions, and their counterattacks are growing more organized, more aggressive. Rommel's tanks, once the embodiment of German might, now seem to lumber across the battlefield, moving with the weight of a machine that's losing its edge. The men in the trenches, those who fight alongside him, have grown weary. The desert has claimed more than just the land. It has taken a toll on their spirit, on their very will to fight. I can see it in their eyes. This is not the same army that surged across Europe, unstoppable in its quest for dominance. This is a tired, battered force, one that has been drained by the ceaseless grind of war. I watch as a soldier, his face caked with dirt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, limps past me. He doesn't speak, doesn't look up. There's nothing left in him but the mechanics of survival. Rommel watches them too, his gaze heavy with something I can't quite describe. There's no pity in his eyes. Rommel doesn't pity his soldiers, not in the way others might. But there is a recognition, an understanding. He knows the toll war takes, knows that even the most brilliant of strategies can't outpace the weight of attrition. The men, the tanks, the desert, it all adds up, and the cost of victory becomes steeper with each passing hour. We move again, following Rommel as he directs his forces, giving orders with a precision that's become mechanical, almost rote. The tension in the air is thick now, as if the entire desert is holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Rommel's genius has served him well, but even the desert fox cannot avoid the inevitable. His audacity, his speed, his brilliance, they are no match for the slow, unrelenting tide of war that grinds everything down. I see him hesitate again, standing at the crest of a small hill, watching his men below. The wind picks up, howling through the desert, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and blood. For a moment, I feel the weight of the silence between us, the stillness that seems to hang in the air. Rommel doesn't speak, but I know what he's thinking. He knows the battle is slipping away from him. He knows the cost of failure, the cost of a loss that could end his career, his legacy. And in that moment, I see something flicker in his eyes, a moment of realization, of acceptance. The desert fox has met his match, and though he is still moving, still commanding, I know the storm is coming. Rommel, for all his brilliance, may not escape this one. The wind howls louder, and the crack of gunfire pierces the silence. But Rommel's eyes remain fixed ahead, his mind locked in a battle not just with the British, but with his own legacy. The sands are shifting, and there's nothing he can do to stop it now. This battle, for all his genius, may be the one he cannot win. But as he turns away from the ridge, I feel something else stir within me, a sense that the war and Rommel are far from over. And as the battle rages on, I realize that what's coming next may not just break Rommel, it may break the very man behind the legend. The sun has begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long, jagged shadows across the desert floor. The heat, though slightly more tolerable as the day fades, still clings to the earth like a vice. The air is heavy, thick with dust and the smell of burning oil. The battle is far from over, but it has taken on a different rhythm now, a slower, more deliberate pace, as if the earth itself is exhausted by the fighting. The sounds of war, the roar of tanks, the crackle of gunfire, the distant hum of aircraft, fill the air, but beneath it all, there's a kind of quiet desperation now. The British forces have dug in deeper, their resistance unyielding, and Rommel, for the first time, seems unsure of how to break through. I move with him through the dust and smoke, watching as he directs his officers with sharp, measured commands. But even as he speaks, I can see it in his eyes, the weight of doubt. His once unshakable confidence, the quiet brilliance that had earned him his place in history, now seems to be slipping through his fingers. The men around him, though still loyal, are tired, their resolve waning. The desert, once a place of opportunity, has become a graveyard of broken dreams. Rommel's tanks, once the unstoppable force that carved through Europe, now move with a sluggishness that mirrors the growing despair in his ranks. He pauses at the edge of a rise, his gaze scanning the horizon. His face is grim, his expression unreadable, but I can see the tension in his posture, the way he holds himself. He's not just fighting the British now, he's fighting time, the desert, and perhaps most dangerously of all, his own mind. The once vibrant strategist, the desert fox who had outwitted his enemies at every turn, is now facing a foe he cannot outsmart, the harsh reality of war. And in this moment, I see something in Rommel that I've never seen before, a flicker of vulnerability. I watch him as he stands there, silent, his eyes fixed on the battlefield below. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of dust and gunpowder. It's a familiar smell, one that has been with us for days, but today it feels different, more oppressive. The weight of the war presses down on Rommel, and I can see him struggling to keep his mind focused, to hold on to the sharp clarity that had once made him a master of strategy. But no amount of genius can change the course of this battle now. His forces are exhausted, his men are worn, and the desert has begun to take its toll on even the strongest of wills. I hear the distant rumble of tanks moving into position, their engines growling like beasts in the night. Rommel turns sharply, his mind already shifting to the next phase of the battle. But even as he moves, I can see the weariness in his movements, the way his hands tremble ever so slightly as he adjusts his uniform. It's a subtle thing, but I can feel it. Rommel is not the same man who led the Africa Corps with such audacity. The weight of the war, the pressure to win, to succeed, is beginning to break him. We move quickly, following his officers as they relay new orders. The sounds of the battle intensify, the explosions growing closer now. The British are pushing back harder, their resistance more organized than ever. Rommel's men, though still loyal, are beginning to show the signs of strain. I see one soldier stumble as he marches forward, his face pale and drawn. His comrades help him to his feet, but I can see the fear in their eyes. They know the battle is turning against them. Rommel, however, moves on with determination, his mind never straying from the task at hand. His orders come quickly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a sharp blade. But even as he speaks, I can sense the inner conflict in him. He is no longer the bold commander who led with reckless abandon, who moved with the speed of a predator. Now, he is caught in a struggle between what he knows is right and the weight of the circumstances pressing down on him. The hours pass slowly, each minute dragging on like an eternity. The battle shifts, moving from one point to another, the back and forth of war continuing without pause. Rommel's forces press forward, but with every step, I can feel the growing sense of futility in the air. The British are not retreating. They are holding their ground, and for every inch Rommel's forces gain, they lose twice as much. The desert, once a place of promise, has become a battlefield of attrition, and Rommel knows this. I see him again, standing at the top of a ridge, watching as his tanks advance slowly toward the British positions. He stands there, his eyes distant, his mind working. But there is something more in his expression now. It's not the cold calculation of a man who knows he will win. It's the heavy contemplation of a man who knows that, for the first time, his genius may not be enough. The battlefield below him is a maze of fire and smoke, a place where victory is no longer certain. Rommel's officers move in and out of his sight, their voices barely audible over the roar of the battle. There is no longer a sense of urgency in his movements, just a quiet determination, as if he's come to terms with the fact that he cannot control everything. He is no longer the untouchable commander, the one who led his forces with unshakable confidence. He is a man caught in a war that seems to have no end, a war where his enemies are not just the British, but the very forces of nature. The desert, the exhaustion, the grinding weight of battle. I watch him for a long moment, standing in silence, his mind clearly at war with itself. The tension in the air is palpable, the battlefield waiting for the next move. Rommel, for all his brilliance, cannot escape the reality of what is happening around him. He is not just losing this battle, he is losing the war, and with it, his place in history. The storm that has been brewing in the desert is now upon him, and I can feel the weight of it. Rommel stands at the edge of the battlefield, his eyes fixed on the horizon, but I know what's coming. He may still fight, still command his men with the same intensity that made him famous, but deep down, he knows the truth. The desert fox is no longer hunting his prey. He is the one being hunted. I hear the distant sound of tanks approaching, the vibrations in the air growing stronger, and for a fleeting moment, I see Rommel's expression change. It's not fear, not exactly, but something darker, something that hints at the growing inevitability of his fate. The sands are shifting once again, and this time, there's no escape. The storm is here, and it will consume everything in its path. The desert has turned cold. The once unbearable heat that had pressed down like a suffocating blanket now gives way to the biting chill of the night. The winds, once oppressive, have softened, but they carry with them the remnants of war, the acrid scent of burning oil, the sharp tang of dust, and the bitter taste of sweat that clings to every breath. The battlefield is still, the sounds of war now replaced by an eerie silence. The distant rumble of artillery and the crack of machine gun fire have faded, leaving only the soft rustle of the wind as it shifts the sand around us, reshaping the world once more. Rommel stands at the edge of the ridge, his back straight, his face unreadable. The weight of the battle hangs on him, visible in the tightness of his jaw, the way he holds himself. His mind, I can see, is still racing, still searching for an answer that isn't there. But the night is settling in, and with it, the growing realization that the battle is slipping away from him. The British have not broken. They are holding firm, their defenses unyielding. The tide of war, once in Rommel's favor, has turned against him. I watch him closely, feeling the distance between us, the quiet space that has grown where once there was a shared purpose. He's alone now, even among his officers, a man trapped by his own mind, by the crushing weight of a war he can no longer win. His eyes are distant, unfocused, as though he's looking at something beyond the desert, beyond the battlefield, a place where he can escape the relentless pressure bearing down on him. The battle has not ended, but the ground beneath him is shifting. Rommel knows it. I know it. We all know it. The sands are no longer the merciless ally they once were. The desert has turned against him, becoming a graveyard for his ambition, for his dreams of victory. And yet, even in the face of defeat, Rommel does not falter. He remains the desert fox, the leader who once moved with such brilliance, such precision. But the desert, in all its vastness, has proven too much for him this time. He turns slowly, his eyes sweeping across the men gathered around him. His officers are still loyal, still listening, still following his commands. But there's something in their eyes now, something that wasn't there before. The burning desire to follow their leader, to fight for him, is beginning to fade. They're tired. They're weary. The battle has worn them down, and even Rommel's presence, once enough to inspire unshakable faith, can no longer turn the tide. One of the officers steps forward, his voice low but steady, as he relays new intelligence about the British movements. Rommel listens, nodding as the officer speaks, but his mind is elsewhere. I can see it in the way he reacts to the news. There's no urgency in his movements, no fire in his eyes. The desert fox is still there, but the sharpness that once defined him is clouded by something else now. Doubt, frustration, maybe even resignation. The wind picks up again, a sharp gust that stirs the sand around us. It's as if the desert itself is trying to push us forward, to urge us to continue, to press on. But Rommel is still, his face drawn tight with concentration. He knows the truth now. He knows that this battle, this war, is slipping from his grasp. The British have him cornered. The desert has drained him, and his men are beginning to see it. The hours pass slowly, each one stretching into the next. Rommel gives his orders, moving through his officers with the same precision, the same calm demeanor that had earned him his reputation. But now, it feels hollow. His words, though still authoritative, lack the same force, the same conviction that once made them a rallying cry for his men. The desert fox is fading, and in his place is a man caught in the grip of war, a man who has fought his hardest, but whose best is no longer enough. I stand next to him, feeling the weight of the silence between us. The desert around us is vast, the night stretching out into eternity. And in this moment, I realize that Rommel is not just fighting the British. He's fighting himself. He's fighting the very reputation that he's built, the legacy that now feels like a heavy burden, the crushing knowledge that he may not be able to live up to the myth he has created. His gaze shifts toward the horizon again, and I can see the exhaustion in his eyes now, the toll the desert has taken on him, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. He's been a commander for so long, a leader who has always found a way to succeed, to outmaneuver, to win. But now, in the quiet of the desert night, I see the cracks in the foundation. Rommel's mind is racing, but the options before him are limited. His brilliance, his genius, cannot change the fact that this battle is lost. The battle rages on, but I know the outcome. The British forces are still entrenched, still holding their ground. Rommel's forces are spread thin, their supply lines stretched to breaking point, their morale faltering. The desert, once his domain, has become a prison from which there is no escape. Rommel knows this. I can see it in the way he looks back toward his officers, his face set in a grim line, the realization settling in. He is no longer the man who made bold moves, who struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. The desert fox is now a man fighting for his survival, his name, his place in history. The wind shifts once more, carrying with it the promise of change, the hint of something darker on the horizon. Rommel's legacy is slipping through his fingers, and with it, the story he has written for himself. The desert, the very place where he built his myth, is now the place where it will be buried. In the stillness of the desert night, I feel the weight of his thoughts. The battle may not be over, but Rommel's greatest challenge lies not on the battlefield, but in the war raging inside him. And as the winds howl through the sand, I know that the storm is far from over. But the question remains, when the dust settles, will Rommel be remembered as the desert fox, or as the man who was undone by his own legend? The night is suffocating now. The desert, which once seemed vast and endless, now feels like a cage. The wind howls, but it does little to lift the oppressive weight in the air, a heavy silence hanging over the battlefield. The stars above are cold, distant points of light that seem to mock the chaos unfolding below. The once blinding heat of the sun has been replaced by an icy chill, but the battle still rages. The world is a blur of smoke, fire, and shadow, and I feel myself growing numb to it all, numb to the sights, the sounds, the weight of it. I am just an observer now, standing on the edge, watching as Rommel's world unravels before him. I watch him as he moves, his every step deliberate, his face set in an unreadable mask. He is no longer the desert fox, the brilliant tactician who carved his name into history with swift, decisive moves. Now he is a man in retreat, not from the enemy, but from the very legacy that once defined him. His mind, once a razor-sharp instrument of war, is dulled by the weight of failure, the crushing knowledge that this battle, this war, is slipping from his grasp. The officers around him, still loyal, still hopeful, are beginning to show signs of wear. Their faces are drawn, their movements slower. They follow his commands with the same discipline, but I can see the doubt creeping into their eyes. The once vibrant energy of the Africa Corps has faded, replaced by exhaustion and a growing sense of inevitability. The desert, which had once been a place where Rommel's genius flourished, is now the very thing that will bury him. The sands have swallowed his victories, and now they are swallowing him whole. Rommel moves from tank to tank, his hands moving with mechanical precision as he gives orders. His voice, once a force that could rally his men, now lacks its old authority. I hear it, a slight tremor in his tone, a break in his otherwise calm demeanor. The desert fox is faltering, and the men can feel it. The weight of history, The pressure of his own reputation is too much for him now. The British forces, still entrenched, still holding their ground, are a force Rommel can no longer outmaneuver. I follow him, though I feel the distance growing between us. He is no longer the man I once admired, the fearless leader who moved with the speed of a predator. He is now a man on the edge, caught between the ghosts of his past victories and the crushing reality of the present. The tanks rumble in the distance, a constant reminder that the war is still being fought, but there is no spark in Rommel now, no fire, just the slow, deliberate march of inevitability. I can see the weariness in his face, the way his eyes linger on the horizon, as if he's searching for something that isn't there. He's searching for a way out, for a way to turn the tide, but there is nothing left to give. He has fought this battle with every ounce of his being, but even the desert fox cannot outrun the desert itself. The sands are shifting, and Rommel is trapped in their grasp. We stop at the top of a ridge, looking out over the battlefield. The once proud tanks of the Africa Corps now seem like hulking ghosts, their guns silent, their tracks buried in sand. The battlefield is quiet now, too quiet, the tension thick in the air. The British have retreated, yes, but they are still there, waiting, watching, preparing for the next strike. And Rommel knows it. I see the resignation in his eyes, the understanding that the end is near. The war is not over, but this battle, this particular moment in time, has already been decided. And Rommel knows he has lost. He turns to his officers, his face hardening as he issues his final orders. His voice is steady, but it carries none of the conviction it once did. He is giving his men one last chance to fight, to push forward, but the energy is gone. The men, though still loyal, can feel it too, the sinking weight of failure hanging over them like a storm cloud. Rommel's eyes meet mine for a brief moment, and in that fleeting glance, I see everything. The weight of his decisions, the burden of his leadership, the crushing weight of a war that has spiraled beyond his control. He is still the desert fox, yes, but now he is a fox caught in a trap, unable to escape the forces that are closing in on him. The tanks roll forward again, but I know, deep down, that it's too late. The British have already won this battle, and with it, they have won a greater victory, the realization that Rommel, the desert fox, is not invincible. He is human, vulnerable, just like the rest of us. As the tanks move off into the smoke, I stand there, watching the battlefield stretch out before me, feeling the weight of the moment press down. Rommel's legacy has been forged in the heat of the desert, but it is also being consumed by it. The sands, once the stage for his greatest triumphs, have now become his tomb. And then it hits me, the finality of it. Rommel may not fall here, in this moment, but he will fall. The war will end, the desert will claim its due, and Rommel's place in history will be forever altered. The desert fox will no longer be the symbol of German might, but a symbol of a man undone by the very thing that made him great. As the sun sinks lower, casting its long shadows across the battlefield, I realize the truth. Rommel has lost the war, not to the British, but to the very forces of nature, to time, to the weight of his own ambition. And as the last of his tanks disappear into the haze of smoke, I feel the finality of it. Rommel's greatest challenge has been faced, and he has not won. The storm is over, but the scars of this battle will last forever. And as I turn away from the battlefield, I hear the soft hiss of the wind as it carries the remnants of war into the desert night. It's a haunting sound, a reminder of what was and what could never be again.